this is Bill Kenower from Author Magazine, and welcome to this month's author interview, COVID-19 edition. That's right, I'm not going to let a little thing like a global pandemic come between me and talking to authors about the books they write and the lives they lead. So this month I spoke with the fabulous Laura Munson, where she was safely ensconced in Montana, I in Seattle. We talked about writing and teaching and the need for community. Enjoy.
Laura, we're having this conversation now via the magic of the internet. And it strikes me that, first of all, it's so good to see you. I speak to you far more often than I ever actually see your face. So this is a real treat for me.
Oh,
And
you're one of my favorite people, Bill. And thank you for everything that you do for authors out there. Authors supporting authors. We are very grateful for you.
well, thank you. And it strikes me that this book, although I know for sure you didn't intend to have it land in the middle of a pandemic, in many ways, the conversation it's about is, I think, relevant to what has come up as we've all had to social distance and self-quarantine, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, never when I wrote this book did I dream that the theme of the book, the through line, which is the central question, so now what, would be so timely, and these women, even though a few of them resisted, they're getting together and having those conversations we need to be having and so often aren't. And now we're having them. We're just not doing it in the same room with one another.
Yeah. Well, and this book, interestingly, so it's not technically about writing, obviously,
Yeah.
but I know a bit about you, and I know that it grew out of a writing experience of yours that you've been having for like 10 years. How long have you been doing the Haven retreats?
I started Haven 1 in 2013. And now there's 6 different programs, and I've got 1,000 alums of those programs from all around the world. And the book was inspired by the magic of what I see happening on these retreats. So while my programs are for writers and people who are seeking more authentic self-expression, because many of the people who come don't consider themselves writers, the retreat really meets you where you need to be met. But I kept thinking, how can I capture what happens? These temporary communities, I call them bridge communities.
Yeah.
Every single time. It's like one woman said, "This is the best family reunion I've never been on." And they always say, "We're your best group," right? Like it could never be this good again. And it just is over and over. And I thought, as a person who loves fiction, how can I capture this in a book without it being about a writing retreat, but also the power of Montana, because I lead the retreats in Montana, and it plays a character in the retreat as it does in the book.
Yeah. And so, all right, let's back up just a little bit. You've got your followers, but some of the people who watch these videos may not be familiar with you, and you have a fantastic story. You've told it a lot. We're not going to have to tell it again and again, but you are the patron saint of persistent writers in many ways. I ran across you when you published a piece in Modern Love, and I thought, I've got to interview this woman, because it was a piece about love and writing and rejection and unconditional acceptance in a way. You are not an overnight success. Let's put it that way. Yeah. You had your years of struggle.
Yeah, I was like a 25-year overnight success. I have written 22, I've lost count, but I think 22 novels. A few of them are good. I have about 5 of them that are in the queue to get published, I hope soon. But I'm known for nonfiction, which is very strange to me because I've really devoted my life to writing fiction. And I knew early on that they would be exercises in learning. I chose not to get my MFA and just cut my teeth on life and learn what it is to sit at the intersection of heart and mind and craft, which is the writing life, as you know well. And so, excuse me, I've got a little tickle in the throat, but I don't have the thing. Not to make light of it in any way at all. But so about I don't know when it was now. It was probably about 10 years ago. I went through a marital crisis, and it occurred to me that because I've been working as a writer with rejection for so long, and scrutiny and the inner critic and how the mind works, and because I'd become aware of how our thought patterns both serve us and sabotage us, and that we are entirely in control of our thought patterns, I thought, well, why don't I apply what I've learned as a writer to this marital crisis? And that's what that book was about. And the short version of it, which a lot of people read in the Modern Love column. So the Modern Love piece, which to date is the #2 most read essay in the history of that column, it's
That's
still blowing my
amazing.
mind. I wrote that thing in 1 hour out of minor desperation, frankly. And then, but I'd already written the book, and the book is called This Is Not the Story You Think It Is. And it became a New York Times bestselling book and was published in 9 countries and was an international bestseller. So that's how I got my start. But fiction is my true love. And that's why I wanted a novel to come next. And then now I've got a whole bunch of other books that I hope to get into print.
And by the way, I forgot to congratulate you because I know novels were your thing. I know you never saw yourself as a memoirist. You didn't see yourself as an essayist, although you have published a lot of pieces in O and the New York Times Magazine, and many places. I know you, and you had this fabulous career. You've been teaching, but I know the dream was fiction. And now, after many years, your first novel, this is your first novel, is finally on the shelf. Show it. Yes, that's right. Marketing. Yeah, there it is, Willis Grove. Very good. Normally it would be sitting behind me. Wait, I've got a copy of it too somewhere. Now I got to find it. Well, anyway, we both got our copies. But congratulations. It's got to feel good. How do you feel about it? Does it feel good? Is it just too weird?
Yeah, it's a little Gertrude Stein-ish, like there is no there in a way, because any writer knows or learns ultimately that it's about the process and loving the process. It has to be. But it was pretty intense going out and being the main character in my last book. I think I was on the road off and on with that book for like 6 years because it was published in all those countries.
Yeah.
And I went on GMA, and then I went on like the equivalent of that in Australia and the UK. So to promote this book, Willis Grove, has been a total dream because I don't star as the main character.
Right.
And, I was in the middle of promoting this book, in the middle of book tour when all this happened with the pandemic. So I had to call it midway. But it was so fascinating, Bill, seeing it come alive, And I was taking this poll across the country and asking these 3 questions at the beginning, which I'd love to share with your viewers.
Sure.
And it was so interesting to see this momentum and to see what was in our collective. So the first question I would ask before I read my excerpts, I guess I don't need my glasses, I can sort of see you. The first question that I asked was, so raise your hand if anybody in this room has ever been through a so now what crossroads moment in their lives. And of course, everybody raises their hand.
Everybody, right? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Then I said, raise your hand if you or someone and I was careful to say someone because I didn't want people to have to expose themselves, is going through one right now. And I'd say about half the room to 3/4 of the room raised their hands. And I asked everybody, look around and see how much this is in the collective. Now, if I was doing this today, everybody would be raising their hand, right? But, it's still half to 3/4. Now, that's not new news for people, but what was new news is that I asked people without raising their hand or calling anything out, do you think that people are in isolation, including you, because you are in this crossroad moment? And I saw a lot of kind of furrowed brows. I saw a lot of kind of nodding and even kind of half raising their hand, even though I said, don't raise your hand. People isolate when they're in these crossroad moments. And why? And this is what was so fascinating and why I was so sad to miss the whole west side of the tour. And I will go out once all of this settles. And I will be coming back to Seattle and Portland and LA, San Francisco.
Good.
But what was so interesting was that the top 3 things that people said were in the collective, because then I said, what do you think those things are? Just, out there. And people said divorce, career, empty nest. Those were 3 of the top ones. We sign up for all 3 of those things, don't we? We don't sign up for taking care of a parent with dementia, right?
Right.
But we sign up for having kids. We sign up for our careers. We sign up for our partners. And if things don't go well, guess what? Enter shame and
Right.
isolation. And that's what Willis Grove is all about. 4 women who've become islands, and they realize that they need each other. They need other people to help them move forward in their lives. And that's so relevant right now.
Do you think, and I think I know the answer, but don't you think women deal with that moment differently than men as a general rule?
Well, that's a huge question, but I think women are socialized to talk. I mean, you and I both have the gab for sure. And I think that, I mean, look, this is very generally speaking, right? But I think that women are socialized that emotions are okay. Like my retreats are open to men and they rarely come. But those who come, I notice, are very comfortable with their emotions and sharing. And there are plenty of women who aren't comfortable with that at all. In fact, 2 of the women in this book, they don't want, they sort of think they've signed up for a spa weekend. They've got one foot out the door.
Right.
It takes a while for them to trust each other, you know?
It's interesting. Here, I'll do, so I also have a book called Fearless Writing, for those of you, since I've got it right next to me. But I teach a class called Fearless Writing. It's almost always attended by all women. But men do come sometimes, and they are usually spiritually interested, emotionally available. Every once in a while, the guys say, God, you just keep talking about emotions. That seems like that's really important for writing. And I'd be like, yeah, yes, my brother, it is. But but it is usually women who are more, and I would say that's true of the spiritual community. I don't know if you consider this book within that at all. I know it's a fiction book, but I think people who are seekers, let's say, are going to be drawn to this kind of book, whether they label themselves spiritual or not.
Yeah, and I'm really careful about this because I want all of my work, whether it's spoken or written, to be inclusive. So like at Haven, one of our rules to keep it safe is that we stay off of politics and religion and hot button subjects in our comings and goings. Now you can write about anything that you write about, and we agree the first night to be responsible, emotional adults. And it just works over and over and over again. So this book is not in any way spiritual, but one of the things when you talk about having your clients or inviting your clients to step deeply into their emotions, one of the things that I do both in this book and on my retreats is invite people to step deeply into their conflict. And to find courage in that, because without, like molecules like stuff to rub up against, right? So if we're skirting around conflict, if we're people who are afraid to look at conflict, we're probably not going to take a fearless writing class. We're probably not going to go on a writing retreat. Maybe you might read a book because it's safe, That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I teach personal essay, what I've learned to have to teach my students is they're trying to understand how to resolve the story. Because usually an essay, a memoir, it's got a story, and I'm trying to understand it, trying to find the core of it. I always do the same thing. I say, look at the conflict. Everything you need is in the conflict. Dig deep into that. The answer to, usually the solution is in the conflict. This is interesting, Laura. I have found, because I write all these little essays, right? Literally, the language I need to write the resolution is within the description of the problem, I find.
That's fascinating.
What do you think of that?
Well, that means you've got your finger on the pulse of what's behind the whole thing. I'm working on a book about self-expression right now, and one of my lines in the book is, you can turn a phrase or twist a plot or have a fabulous command of the English language all day long, but if you don't have your finger on the pulse of what's behind the words, then it'll never build that bridge to the reader. So it's like, I'm interested in teaching people about getting in touch with their intuition, what's behind the words, what's in between them, and then what's left in their wake. And that will never happen if you're not willing to look at conflict. I mean, our whole life is conflict, resolve, hopefully.
That's
but if we go straight to the resolve without honoring what the conflict has to teach us, forget it. Like these women have each of them has a central conflict that I feel is so relatable. One is the Emersonian dream of self-reliance versus interdependence or community.
Right.
And one of the things that was so much fun about writing this was not making anybody right or wrong.
Right.
The other conflict is religion versus faith. That's a big one for a lot of people, religion versus faith. The third one is money doesn't bring you happiness. It brings you choices and comfort, but not necessarily happiness. And the fourth one is addiction to ambition.
Yeah.
addiction to ambition. And you can bet I've experienced all those things, but none of these characters is me.
Right.
And none of these characters is anybody I know, but they're all of us.
You know, I thought you did a great job of writing from the point of view of the woman whose husband had passed away. I don't give anything away. This is where the book begins with the protagonist. Yeah. I mean, she's sort of the protagonist. It's not, it's sort of an ensemble cast, but she's sort of the central hub of it. And I thought you did a lovely job of writing about her, because I think that's a challenging thing to do. I know you've been through divorce. That's not death. And so that's a different thing. And I thought you did it very convincingly. So my hat's off to you. It's not always easy to do.
Thank you. Yes, the whole book is told from her point of view. When I first wrote, this is like the 19th draft of this book. It took me about 7 years to really get it right. And that's about par for the course for a novel, I think. Yeah. And but at the beginning, I had it through each of their points of view and in different sections. And it was like head hopping, and it felt disorienting. So it's all through Willa's point of view. And you know, a grove is one organism. A grove of aspens is one organism. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Well, now you do. A grove of aspens is one organism. And so these women start to vibe as one organism. That's why it's called Willis Grove. But what I hope is that people will read it as a novel, but then afterwards say, I want to have Bill's Grove or Laura's Grove, and use the model of the book, which is Bill, who's going through, let's say, a crossroads moment, knows his friend Sheila, who's going through a crossroads moment, and she knows Constance, who's, et cetera. And so they use the invitation in this book, which begins, you are invited to the rest of your life, and follow the model, friend to friend to friend to friend, take a week off of your life, go somewhere and do some of the stuff in this book so that you can figure out how to move forward in your life. You do not have to do it alone, and too many of us try to and fail miserably. Yeah. I'm done with that. This book is a call to action for community.
Well, and I think that I just published a piece in Author yesterday about how the virus has helped us in certain ways understand our desire for community and the value of the internet in a weird way. But it's put the most positive spin, as I am wont to do, on things. And the response had quite surprised me at how excited some people who I don't hear from that often I heard from on that. And I think that this time has shown us, I am not interested in the narrative that we are not interested in community anymore because of the internet and Twitter and blah, blah. I don't buy it. I think we are, this is how we are, no matter what technology does to us. And I think that this book reaffirms that, looks deeply at it, but I don't think we can ever not solve our problems in part through community. I just think it's part of how we do it, the way horses and fish do it.
It's how we're designed. I mean, I wish I could show you what I'm looking at right now. And I feel very grateful that I'm not quarantined. I'm on self-quarantine because of book tour. I was out on the road, and who knows what I was exposed to. So I've been on self-quarantine for about 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. But I mean, I still get to walk around in Montana, so I feel really blessed. And, it's springtime and the migration is back, and the birds are the trees talk to each other. It's scientific. The birds have so much to teach us. They have, I don't know if you're into birds, but I've learned a lot. There's a marsh behind my house, and, they have different language for different times of the year. And I've noticed that a lot of people, because of what's going on, are slowing down and paying attention. There's a scene in the book toward the end, and I won't give it away, but the women, they've told themselves the story of what was supposed to happen in their lives. They've then told the story of what actually happened. And they've done that in order to really hold space for people to have those conversations we need to have, even though, again, some of them are resisting it, in order to find their so now what. And it's toward the end of the book, and they're standing on a bridge, and it's springtime, sort of this time of year. It's actually in May, runoff, and the water is rushing through the Montana River. And they do this really cool thing that is actually on this bookmark that I was giving to people on the road. And I'd love to be able to offer it in PDF form. There's a writing prompt on here, and I've created a PDF so I can give it to people virtually to put in their books. But one of the characters says, after they finish this exercise, she says she lives outside of New York City, and she says, I just don't know how I'm going to be when I go back home. I've just loved being in nature. I don't, I found who I am again. And who am I going to be when I get back to Connecticut? And Willa says to her, and again, I am not Willa, but Jane, you are nature.
Right.
You are nature, and we are all nature, whether we're in a cubicle or an elevator or in Central Park or walking around in the Arboretum in Seattle or in the wilds of Montana. And that's something I think people are paying attention to right now, because a lot of people can't go outside, but they can look out the window, they can look into the sky, they can listen to the birds in a way that they would have missed a month ago, not even thought about a month ago. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree that we are nature. We are life. Life is as much in us as in the trees, as in the sperm whale. There's no difference. It's all the same stuff. And I think that as writers, we have to kind of tune into that. I think if you do a certain kind of writing, I think about this a lot, but I think that this time has made people have to slow down and have to look for pleasure differently, think about their lives differently. This really hasn't changed my life significantly. I was on a book tour, so if that had been the case, it would have, but my life remains largely the same, except that I couldn't interview you in person. But I see for a lot of people, it's shaken them up, but I think something good is happening. These friends of mine who I've been talking to online, they're used to working all these crazy hours. Mm-hmm. And now they're having to sort of settle down and discover they're okay without that job. See, it's a funny thing. You and I we had our own supposed to be, right? And I think they were very close. I think they were very, very close. And if you had described what I'm doing now to myself at 30, I would have said, you're nuts. I'm not going to be doing that. I love what I'm doing, but I never would have thought I was doing that. I don't know if that was the case for you.
Didn't you want to be an actor?
No, I wanted to be a novelist. I wanted to be, I don't know, Michael Chabon or something. I wanted that kind of a career. I really thought that's what I was going to do. I didn't see myself helping people. I didn't see myself coaching people. I didn't see myself writing nonfiction. I thought, that's not me. But I love this. I love what I'm doing. But I would have said, you're crazy. I'm never going to do that.
Yeah, but Bill, you and I are both natural teachers.
Yeah.
But
I didn't know that. But I had no idea of that.
I didn't know either, but I think well, this is a big thing to say, but I think what makes a strong teacher is somebody who walks the walk and who truly knows how to be a student too.
Yeah.
Who's a leader, who knows how to facilitate a group, who's confident, but who's also humble and open and willing to, change things on the fly. Like when I go into like an interview, you and I have talked about this, or if I go into a classroom teaching a new workshop, or, I teach all sorts of different things. Right now I'm teaching So Now What workshops because
Excellent.
People really need this.
Sure, of course.
And they're, writing is a therapeutic tool. And I think it should be up there with diet and exercise in the realm of preventative wellness.
Yes. Amen. Yes. Amen. I agree.
Amen. And so right now we're all pivoting and flying by the seat of our pants. But, I think that if you have that strong relationship with your intuition, which you have and I have, then the message can come out in many different ways and on the fly and still be real and authentic and useful for people. But if you come in with notes and a script, we're all off script now. It's never going to work.
I've given up on the scripts. I come in and just see what happens.
Right?
I'm happiest.
But you couldn't have done that when you were 21 years old.
No.
Right?
No, not at all. Now, I'm not quite done with you. You had something you wanted to share specifically from the book with the viewers. Do you have, is this a good time to do that?
Well, it is. And there's several iterations of it, but I suppose this is, for anybody who reads this book, at the end of the book, there's a letter to the reader, and I want you to read it. I don't want this book to be prescriptive in any way. That's why I put it at the end. In the advanced reading copy, it's at the beginning, but I realize the book needs to stand on its own. But then there's this letter to the reader at the end, and I hope that you'll all read it because it really shows you how you can continue the momentum of this community. But at the beginning of that letter to the reader, there's just two sentences that come from something that one of the characters say. And while I promise it's not autobiographical, this actually came out of my mouth at a birthday party full of a bunch of authors. And one of the authors, I won't say who she is, but you've all heard of her, said, you need to write that down. And that's what, right, as writing teachers, we always say to people.
Yeah, right.
And I did, and then I made it come out of the mouths of one of the characters, and it worked well. And I just want to share this with your community, because
Absolutely.
I love this line, and we need this right now. Okay, she says, and this is about 3/4 of the way through the book, so this isn't like this clear philosophy at the beginning. This is hard won. And she says, you know, we're all fluent in this language, in the language of community, and yet we so rarely speak it. It really is our mother tongue. One more time.
That's good, yeah.
You know, we're all fluent in this language, in the language of community, and yet we so rarely speak it. It really is our mother tongue.
It's good.
So let's start speaking it, people.
Yeah. It's because this is it. We're all the same thing. We can't, that's another thing this pandemic has proven. We're all just so tied all together. We can't not be. We don't know how not to be. Good stuff, Laura. Good stuff.
Thank you, Bill.
Now, as you know, if you've ever seen or heard my interviews, I've got to ask you the question I ask all my authors. I'm going to ask it to you now. There's probably a million ways you can answer it, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to finish this sentence. If writing has taught you anything, it's taught you what?
Honesty. Can I have more than one word?
Yes, you can.
I am a novelist after all.
Yes.
Honesty, courage. It hasn't taught me empathy, because I think you have to be empathetic to
Kind of have to be to do it, yeah.
Yeah. But honesty, courage, and humility. How about that?
Those are, it's interesting. Those are great. And I would say those are the top 3 answers I get. Humility is a big one. Courage, big one. And honesty. I tell my students, if you can be honest, you're good to go. If you can, don't worry about being fancy. Don't worry about being eloquent. Just see if you can manage honesty, and you will be doing all right.
And perseverance helps.
Yes, it does.
But that comes from courage, right? That's why I was going to say perseverance, but you can't have perseverance without courage. So.
And the root of courage is core, which is the heart, which is love. You see? That's where it comes. Yes, see? That's where it comes from. Well, I could talk to you forever, and sometimes we do, but not this time. So, Laura, thank you so much. Wash your hands. Spread the word.
And spread the love. Spread
Absolutely.
the love. All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much. And love to you and all your viewers out there. And let's just not only stay safe, but hopeful and inspired. And if you've got a journal sitting there, blow the dust off of it. Now is the time to get in touch with your words and your self-expression again. It's waiting for you, and it's right here.
Absolutely.
Do it.